minus 71 degrees Celsius. At such a temperature, ordinary products from the supermarket turn to stone within minutes. Bread becomes hard as a brick. Milk freezes into a solid column. An apple dropped on the ground shatters into pieces like glass. But for the Kuyuk family, living in the tiny settlement of Grise Fjord, the northernmost inhabited point of Canada, this is an ordinary February day. A day when you need to prepare food for a family of 9. Food that will warm from the inside, provide energy for survival in the coldest inhabited place on the planet. Food that their ancestors ate for thousands of years, long before the appearance of stores, refrigerators, and imported products. I spend a week with this family, observing, tasting, recording every detail of their diet. What I learn will overturn all my ideas about food, nutrition, and survival. 6 o'clock in the morning. The polar night holds the settlement in absolute darkness. The sun will not return for another month and a half. Inside the Kuyuk family's house, the temperature is plus 19, maintained by 2 stoves, a kerosene one and a fat-burning one. In the kitchen, the head of the family, Nunuki, is already bustling about. A woman of 63 years, she has been cooking since she was 6 and knows Arctic cuisine like no one else. The first thing she does every morning is go to the cold room of the house, where the temperature is minus 20, and take out meat for breakfast. The cold room is essentially a huge natural freezer where supplies for the entire winter are stored. On wooden shelves lie pieces of frozen meat: seal, caribou, muskox, narwhal, beluga, walrus. Also fish, Arctic char, cod, whitefish. All of this was procured by the men of the family over the past year of hunting. Nunuki takes a piece of seal meat the size of 2 palms, weighing about a kilogram. The meat is frozen solid as stone. Its color dark red, almost black. She brings it to the kitchen, places it on a large wooden board. For breakfast we'll make tarlit, she says. This is frozen raw meat with fat, the most traditional food of the Inuit, what we have been eating for thousands of years. She takes out a large knife and begins shaving the frozen meat into thin slices directly from the piece. This requires strength and skill. The meat is hard as wood. But her hands, trained over decades, work confidently. Slices fall onto the plate, each 2 to 3 millimeters thick, translucent when held up to the light. The key to tarlit is that the meat must be properly frozen, she explains. Not too deeply, then it's impossible to cut, but not partially thawed either, then it cuts thick, unevenly. You need a temperature of minus 15 to minus 20. That's exactly what it is in the cold room right now. Perfect. To the meat she adds muktuk, whale fat with skin. This is a separate delicacy that the family obtained in autumn, when the entire community together harvested a narwhal. The muktuk is stored in a wooden barrel, salted with seawater for preservation. Nunuki takes out several pieces, rinses off the salt under cold water, and cuts them into cubes about 2 by 2 centimeters. Muktuk is the foundation of our diet, she says, laying out the cubes on a plate next to the meat. It contains all the vitamins a person needs for life in the Arctic. Vitamin C, more than in oranges even though it's fat, not fruit. Vitamin D, which isn't found in other food here, where there's no sun for half the year. Omega-3 fatty acids for the brain and heart. My ancestors ate only muktuk and meat their entire lives, never knew vegetables, fruits, or bread. And they were healthy, strong, and had many children. A bowl of misirak, fermented walrus meat, is also placed on the table. This is meat that was specially buried in the ground in summer, when the earth thaws to a depth of 1 meter, and left there for 3 months. During that time it ferments, acquiring a characteristic sharp smell and taste, becoming soft and easily digestible. Misirak, not all white people can eat it. warns Nunuki, opening the container. The smell is very strong, specific. But for us, it's like cheese for Europeans. A delicacy, a source of enzymes and bacteria that help digest fatty meat-based food. The smell is indeed powerful, sharp, resembling very aged cheese mixed with fish and something else indefinable. My stomach turns, but I see how the family's children, the youngest being 5 years old, happily take pieces, chew, and smile. For them, this is familiar, beloved food. To this is added freshly baked bannock, the traditional bread of the Inuit. It is a flat cake made from flour, water, salt, and fat, fried in a pan. The flour is imported from southern Canada and costs dearly. 800 rubles per kilogram with delivery by airplane. But it is the only carbohydrate in the diet, so the family buys 20 kilograms of flour once every 2 months. Nunuki kneads the dough with quick movements. Flour, water, a pinch of salt, a spoonful of seal fat. The fat makes the dough soft and adds calories. She shapes the flatbreads by hand, places them on a scorching hot pan without oil. The fat in the dough itself prevents sticking. In 5 minutes, the bannock is ready, golden, fragrant. And finally, tea. A huge kettle of boiling water on the kerosene stove, into which a handful of black tea is poured, and a lot of sugar is added. Tea here is drunk very sweet, almost like syrup. Sugar is quick energy, explains Nunuki. When it's cold, the body burns calories very fast. Sweet tea instantly gives energy, warms from the inside. The family gathers at the table. Nunuki, her husband Isaac, 67 years old, 3 adult children with their spouses, and 4 grandchildren from 5 to 16 years old. Everyone eats silently, with focus, quickly. From the plates disappear slices of frozen meat, cubes of muktuk, pieces of fermented walrus, bannock. It is all washed down with liters of hot, sweet tea. In one such breakfast, the family eats 1.5 kilograms of meat, a kilogram of fat, 3 bannock flatbreads, and drinks 3 liters of tea. I try a little of everything. The frozen meat is a strange sensation. Cold, it melts in the mouth, releasing the taste of pure protein, slightly sweet, without spices, salt, or processing. The texture is like carpaccio, thin slices but icy. The muktuk is fatty, oily. The skin is springy and needs to be chewed for a long time. The taste of the ocean, iodine, something ancient, primordial. The fermented meat I barely swallow. The taste and smell are too intense for my unprepared stomach. But the bannock is delicious, familiar, comforting in this sea of exotica. After breakfast, Nunuki explains to me the fundamentals of Arctic nutrition, a science of survival developed over millennia of trial and error. The main thing to understand, she says, is that in the Arctic there are no plants in winter, none at all. No vegetables, fruits, grain, nothing. Only meat and animal fat. That's why our ancestors developed a diet that is 95% animal products and 5% the little that can be gathered in summer and preserved. Such a diet is called ketogenic, I explain, recalling modern knowledge about nutrition. Almost no carbohydrates, lots of fat, lots of protein. The body switches to burning fats instead of carbohydrates, entering a state of ketosis. Nunuki nods, though these terms are unfamiliar to her. We don't know the scientific words, she says, but we know that it works. Our people have lived this way for 4,000 years and remained healthy and strong. Before the arrival of white people with their flour, sugar, and canned goods, we had no diabetes, no obesity, no heart disease. She explains that an adult hunter in the Arctic burns 6,000 to 7,000 calories a day simply to maintain body temperature and perform ordinary work. That is twice as much as in a warm climate. Therefore, very calorie-dense food is needed. Fat contains 9 calories per gram, the most concentrated source of energy. 100 grams of seal fat is 900 calories. Eat 300 grams for breakfast and you get 2,700 calories, a third of the daily requirement. But it's not only calories that matter, she continues. Vitamins, minerals, everything the body needs are important. White people think that without vegetables and fruits you can't get vitamins, that there will be scurvy, diseases, but that's not true. In raw meat, especially in organs, there are all the vitamins. She shows me a list of what they eat regularly and what it gives the body. Liver of seal, walrus, caribou. Vitamin A in enormous quantities, so much that you cannot eat more than 100 grams a day, otherwise there is poisoning. Also B vitamins, iron, zinc. Muktuk, whale fat with skin. Vitamin C. Yes, in the fat of marine mammals there is vitamin C because they eat plankton and fish that accumulated. Also vitamin D from sunlight, which whales receive at the ocean's surface. Raw meat. All B vitamins, especially B12, which is found only in animal products. Also iron in an easily absorbable form. Zinc, selenium. Bone marrow. Omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin K2 for bones, collagen for joints and skin. Animal eyes. Vitamin A, fatty acids for eye health, especially important in conditions of polar night and bright snow. Heart. Coenzyme Q10 for cellular energy. Taurine for heart function. B vitamins. Kidneys. Vitamin B12, selenium, iron. They help cleanse the body. This sounds strange to a modern person, I say. We are accustomed to thinking that a healthy diet means vegetables, fruits, whole grains, minimal meat and fat. And you eat the opposite. Only meat and fat, no plants. And yet you are healthy. Nunuki smiles. White people live in a world of abundance, she explains. They have vegetables year-round, fruits from the tropics, grain from the fields. They developed a diet suited to their conditions. We live in a world where none of that exists for 8 months of the year. We developed a diet suited to our conditions. Both work. They're just different. Lunch in the Kayuk family begins at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, though outside the window it is still darkness. Nunuki prepares seal soup, the main dish on cold days. A large pot of water is placed on the kerosene stove. Into it are thrown pieces of seal meat on the bone, a whole seal head for rich broth, chopped carrots and potatoes, bought at the store for enormous sums, onion and salt. Carrots and potatoes are a concession to modernity, she explains. Before, only meat and water were thrown into the soup, boiled for about 6 hours, producing a thick, fatty broth. Now the children are used to vegetables and ask us to add them. We buy them sometimes when there's money. Carrots cost 300 rubles per kilogram, potatoes 250, delivery by airplane once a month. The soup simmers for 4 hours over low heat. Gradually the house fills with the aroma. Meaty, fatty, with a slight fishy undertone that seal meat always has. Nunuki periodically skims the foam from the top, tastes the broth, adds salt. While the soup cooks, she prepares iguanak, the most extreme dish in Arctic cuisine. These are fermented seabirds, gulls or little auks, that are caught in summer and preserved in a special way. The birds are not plucked, not gutted. They are placed whole into a seal skin sewn into a bag. Seal fat is added, and it is tied shut hermetically. Then it is buried in the permafrost at a depth of 1 meter and left for 3 to 6 months. During that time, the birds ferment completely. Bones soften, feathers separate, innards turn into a paste. The result is a product with an incredibly strong smell and taste that the Inuit consider a delicacy, while most white people cannot even be near it. Nunuki takes a container of iguanak from the freezer and opens it. The smell explodes in the room. Sharp, ammoniac, putrid. I recoil, pinching my nose. She laughs. Yes, for those unaccustomed, it's hard. But try it. It's incredibly nutritious. In iguanak, there are millions of beneficial bacteria that help digest fatty food. Also a lot of vitamin K2, which bacteria produce during fermentation. She takes out one bird, softened, dark gray, and places it on the cutting board. She separates the meat from the bones. The bones are soft, breaking easily. She cuts the meat into pieces and lays them out on a plate. She offers me a taste. I take a small piece and put it in my mouth. The taste explodes on the tongue. Sharp, sour, fermented, with notes of cheese, fish, something rancid. The texture is soft, almost creamy. I chew, swallow, trying not to think about what it is. The taste lingers in the mouth for a long time. Intrusive, impossible to ignore. Nunuki is pleased with my attempt. Well done, she says. Most white people don't even try. They refuse immediately. But iguanak is part of our culture. It's what helped us survive in the hardest times. When fresh meat ran out in winter, iguanak saved us from starvation. For lunch, the soup is served in large bowls, each portion about 1.5 liters. The broth is thick, fatty. Circles of orange seal fat float on top. Pieces of meat the size of a fist. Bones with remnants of meat. Carrots and potatoes boiled soft. With the soup comes bannock, fresh, warm. And again tea. Liters of sweet, hot tea. I try the soup. The taste is rich, meaty, fatty, warming. I feel warmth spreading through my body from the first spoonful. The fat coats the mouth, giving a feeling of satiety. The meat is soft, falling apart into fibers. The taste is specific, oceanic, but not unpleasant after a few spoonfuls. Over lunch, the family eats the entire pot of soup. That is approximately 10 liters of liquid and 3 kilograms of meat. Also 6 bannock flatbreads and 2 kilograms of iguanak. It is washed down with 5 liters of tea. The caloric content of this lunch for 9 people is about 30,000 calories, roughly 3,500 per person. After lunch, while everyone rests, Nunuki tells me about the seasonality of Arctic cuisine, about how the diet changes throughout the year. Spring, April and May, is the time of seals, she explains. Seals come out onto the ice to give birth to their pups. They are easy to hunt. We stockpile as much seal meat and fat as we can. This is the foundation of supplies for the following winter. Summer, June through August, is the time of birds, eggs, fish, and the few plants there are. We collect eggs of seabirds on the cliffs, thousands of eggs per season. We catch fish with nets in the rivers, Arctic char, whitefish, cod. We gather berries, cloudberries, blueberries, cranberries, as many as we can find. We dig plant roots, burdock root, willow root. All of this we dry, freeze, and preserve for winter. Autumn, September and October, is the time of caribou, northern reindeer, and marine mammals. Caribou migrate south, passing through our territory. We harvest them for meat and hides. We also hunt narwhals, belugas, and walruses while the ocean hasn't frozen over. These are the most important months. We need to stockpile as much as possible for the long winter. Winter, November through March, is the time of surviving on reserves and hunting seals through the ice. Fresh meat is scarce. We eat mostly frozen and fermented food. This is the hardest time. Maximum cold, constant darkness, monotonous food. But we survive because we prepared well in autumn. She shows me the freezer room where the supplies are stored. Enormous pieces of frozen meat hang on hooks. Whole caribou carcasses, quarters of muskox, seal carcasses. On the shelves lie fish, frozen solid. In barrels, muktuk in brine, fermented meat. In bags, dried meat, wind-cured the previous summer. In jars, berries mashed with sugar. In total, there are about 500 kilograms of meat, 100 kilograms of fat, 50 kilograms of fish, and 20 kilograms of berries and other plant products. This will last the family for 5 months of winter, if used sparingly and supplemented with fresh hunting. The cost of these supplies, if one were to buy the equivalent in a store, would be about 1 million rubles, I calculate. But the family procured everything themselves, through hunting and gathering. The only expenses are ammunition, gasoline for the snowmobile, and salt and sugar for preservation, approximately 50,000 rubles per hunting season. In the evening, at 8 o'clock, dinner is prepared. Nunuki decides to make something special, to show me the diversity of Arctic cuisine. She takes out a piece of caribou, venison, and thaws it in warm water for an hour. Then she cuts it into thin steaks and fries them in a pan with seal fat. The meat cooks quickly, 1 minute on each side, remaining pink inside. With the meat she serves akutak, Eskimo ice cream, a traditional dessert. This is whipped caribou or seal fat mixed with berries and sometimes with fish. Nunuki whips the seal fat with a wooden paddle for about 20 minutes until it becomes white and airy like cream. She adds frozen cloudberries, a little sugar, and mixes it all together. The result is a pinkish white mass resembling mousse. Akutak is very calorie-dense, she explains. 1 cup is 1,500 calories, pure fat and sugar. In the old days, hunters took it on the trail. A small piece gave energy for several hours. Now we eat it as dessert. The children love it. Also placed on the table is niku, dried caribou meat cut into thin strips and air-dried until it reaches a jerky-like state. It is like beef jerky but made from venison, leaner and more aromatic. It takes a long time to chew. The taste is concentrated, rich. And one more special dish. Caribou eyes, boiled. Nunuki boils them in water for 10 minutes and serves them whole on a plate. The eyes are the size of a large plum, white after cooking. She cuts one in half, showing the internal structure. The vitreous body, the lens, the retina. Eyes are very good for vision, she says. They contain a lot of vitamin A and special fats needed for the eyes. We eat the eyes of all the animals we harvest. It's tradition. It's respect for the animal, to use every part. I take half an eye and bite into it. The texture is strange. The outer membrane is firm, rubbery. The inside is soft, gelatinous. The taste is mild, almost neutral, slightly meaty. I swallow, trying not to think about the fact that it is an eye. The family dines with pleasure. Caribou steaks, niku, akutak, boiled eyes, bannock, tea. Over dinner, 2 kilograms of meat are eaten, half a kilogram of dried meat, a liter of akutak, and 4 eyes. The caloric content is about 20,000 calories for everyone. After dinner, I sit down with Nunuki and tally the family's daily diet. Breakfast, 1.5 kilograms of meat, a kilogram of fat, 3 bannock flatbreads. Lunch, 3 kilograms of meat in soup, 2 kilograms of iguanak, 6 bannock flatbreads. Dinner, 2 kilograms of meat, half a kilogram of dried meat, a liter of akutak. Total for the day, 6.5 kilograms of meat, 2 kilograms of fat, and about a kilogram of carbohydrates from bannock and berries. Total caloric content is about 70,000 calories for 9 people, approximately 7,000 to 8,000 per adult. Nutrient ratio. Protein 30%, fat 60%,
carbohydrates 10%. A classic ketogenic diet. The next day, Nunuki invites me to watch how she prepares mipku, fermented seal flippers, one of the most traditional and technically complex dishes.
This dish is prepared once a year, in autumn, when there are fresh seals, and is stored all winter as a delicacy for special occasions. The process begins with preparing the seal flippers. Nunuki takes 4 front flippers from a seal caught the day before by her son. The flippers are large, meaty, with 5 fingers and claws. She thoroughly washes them in cold water, removing traces of blood. Then she makes deep incisions along the bones so the meat ferments better. Next, a brine is prepared from seawater and seal blood. Seawater is collected in winter by cutting a hole in the ice. It is naturally salty, no need to add salt. The seal blood adds iron and special enzymes that aid the fermentation process. The proportions are 3 liters of seawater to 1 liter of blood. The flippers are placed in a wooden barrel and completely covered with the brine so there is no contact with air. On top is placed a weight, a heavy stone that keeps the flippers submerged. The barrel is closed with a lid, but not hermetically. A small amount of air access is needed for certain bacteria. The barrel is taken out to the cold room, where the temperature is a stable -15. At such a temperature, fermentation proceeds slowly, about 3 months. Fast fermentation at above 0 temperatures would give the wrong flavor, explains Nunuki. Slow, cold fermentation gives a deep, complex taste that we value. She shows me a barrel of mipku that has been fermenting since October, already 4 months. She opens the lid and takes out 1 flipper. It has changed. The meat has become grayish pink, soft, easily separating from the bones. The smell is strong, sour, with notes of cheese and sea, but not putrid, rather piquant. Nunuki separates the meat from the bones, cuts it into pieces, and lays them out on a plate. She serves it at lunch as an appetizer. The taste is incredibly rich, sour, salty, umami, all flavors at once. The texture is tender, melting. This truly is a delicacy, I realize, though a very unusual one for the European palate. Mipku contains an enormous quantity of probiotics, Nunuki explains. Billions of beneficial bacteria that aid digestion. In the Arctic, where we eat a lot of fatty meat, these bacteria are critically important. They help break down fats, absorb vitamins, and support gut health. Our ancestors didn't know the word probiotics, but they knew that fermented food made them stronger. She explains that in the traditional Inuit diet, fermented foods make up about 20% of the winter diet. Besides mipku and igunak, there is also ivalik, fermented walrus skin, karnak, fermented seal innards, and fermented fish. All of these are methods of preservation without refrigerators or salt, developed thousands of years ago. Modern science is only beginning to understand how intelligent the traditional Arctic diet was, she continues. Recently, scientists came from a university, took samples of our food, and studied them. They said our food contains a greater diversity of beneficial bacteria than any store-bought probiotics. They also found substances that protect against inflammation, cell oxidation, and aging. After lunch, Nunuki teaches me how to prepare uk, boiled meat with blood, a simple but very important dish. A piece of seal meat with bone is taken, placed in a pot with cold water, and brought to a boil. As soon as it boils, the heat is reduced to a minimum, and the meat simmers very slowly for about 4 hours. The key point is not to pour off the foam that rises during cooking, she explains. That foam contains many proteins and minerals that have come out of the meat. White people always skim off the foam, considering it impurities. We leave it, stir it back into the broth. All the nutrients must stay in the food. When the meat is cooked, It is removed from the broth. The broth remains in the pot, and fresh seal blood is added, about 1 cup. The blood coagulates from the temperature, forming flakes that float in the broth. The result is a thick, dark red soup. Blood is liquid meat, says Nunuki. It contains as much protein as meat, plus an enormous amount of iron, vitamin B12, and folic acid. It is especially important for women, for children, for growing bodies. We never pour out an animal's blood. We use every last drop. Ook is served in deep bowls, a piece of boiled meat covered with blood broth, sprinkled with wild herbs gathered in summer and dried. The taste is deep, iron-rich, intense. The broth is thick, nourishing, warming. This is food for the coldest days, says Nunuki. When it is -70 outside, eat a bowl of ook, and you are warm all day. That same evening, the family holds a small celebration, a birthday for one of the grandchildren. Nunuki prepares special dishes that are made only for holidays. The first is nekalak, a mixture of caribou brains whipped with berries and fat. The brains are boiled, cooled, and mashed into a paste. Whipped fat, cranberries, and a little salt are added. The result is a pink, creamy mass. Brains are very good for the human brain. Nunuki smiles at this obvious truth. They contain special fats, DHA and EPA, which build brain cells. Also cholesterol, which is needed for hormone production. We give brains to children so they grow up smart and quick-witted. The second holiday dish is smoked Arctic char, fish that was smoked the previous summer over willow branch smoke. The fish is stored in a cold room, frozen, retaining its smoked aroma for months. Nunuki thaws several fish, cuts them into pieces, and serves them with rendered seal fat as a sauce. The third is fresh caribou liver, barely seared, pink inside. The liver is sliced thin, seared on a very hot pan for literally 10 seconds on each side. A crust on the outside, nearly raw inside, tender, melting. And finally, dessert. Dried berries mixed with fat and flour, rolled into balls the size of a walnut. These are Arctic energy balls, Nunuki explains. Each ball is about 200 calories. You can take them on the road, eat them while hunting for quick energy. The holiday table overflows with food. Mipku, nekalak, smoked fish, liver, energy balls, plus the usual dishes. Meat, muktuk, bannock, tea. The family eats, laughs, tells stories. Children play, elders share memories. The atmosphere is warm, joyful, despite -71 outside the window. I realize that food for the Inuit is not simply nourishment, not simply calories and vitamins. It is culture. It is a connection to the land, to the animals, to the ancestors. Every dish carries a story. How grandparents prepared it, how ingredients were obtained, how they were shared with neighbors. Food is a way of passing knowledge from generation to generation. A way of preserving a people's identity. The next day, Nunuki tells me about the modern challenges facing traditional Arctic cuisine, about how the world around them is changing. The main problem, she says, is that young people leave for the cities and forget the traditional ways. In the city, they eat pizza, burgers, Coca-Cola. They come back to the settlement on vacation, refuse to eat muktuk and igunak, say it is disgusting. Climate change also affects the availability of traditional foods. The ice melts earlier. Animals change their migration routes. Some species become rarer. There are fewer seals. Caribou arrive later. We have to buy more from the store, and imported food is expensive and not as nutritious. A kilogram of beef at the store costs 1,200 rubles, she continues. This is on an average salary of 25,000 rubles in the settlement. A family of 9 eats about 100 kilograms of meat per month. That is 120,000 rubles, almost 5 salaries. Impossible. That is why we hunt. We provide for ourselves. It is the only way to survive. But hunting is also becoming more expensive. Ammunition, gasoline, snowmobiles. Everything is getting more costly. A new snowmobile costs 800,000 rubles and lasts about 10 years if you take care of it. Gasoline is 200 rubles per liter with delivery. During a hunting season, we burn about 500 liters. Ammunition is 150 rubles per round. You need about 200 per year. Plus repairs, spare parts, clothing. You need to invest about 70 to 80,000 rubles a year in hunting to obtain food worth 500,000 at store prices. The third problem is the loss of knowledge. The elders who remember all the traditional recipes, all the preservation methods, all the secrets, are dying. Their children and grandchildren are not always interested. Do not write things down. Do not learn. When the last elder dies, many recipes will die with them. That is why I teach everyone who wants to learn, says Nunuki. Come, white people, scientists, journalists. I show, I tell, I let them taste. Write books, film videos, record recipes. Let the world know how we live, what we eat, how we survive in the coldest place on earth. On my last day with the family, Nunuki gives me a final lesson. She teaches me to make putasik, a hunter's trail food that can be stored for years without spoiling. It is a mixture of dried meat pounded into powder, mixed with rendered fat and berries, pressed into dense bricks. The process begins with dried caribou meat. Lean meat is taken, cut into thin strips, and hung in the wind in a cold room for 2 weeks. The meat dries completely, becoming hard as wood. Then it is pounded in a mortar to a coarse powder. At the same time, seal fat is rendered. The fat is cut into cubes, placed in a large pot over low heat. It melts for several hours until it turns into clear, golden oil. The cracklings are removed and the oil is strained. The meat powder is mixed with rendered fat in a ratio of 2 to 1. Dried berries, ground to powder, are added. Everything is thoroughly mixed, producing a thick paste. The paste is spread into wooden molds, pressed down, and formed into bricks the size of a fist. The bricks are dried in a cold room for another week, becoming very dense and hard. Each brick weighs about 300 grams and contains 2,500 calories. 1 brick is a hunter's daily ration under extreme conditions. Such putasik can be stored for years, Nunuki explains. The fat preserves the meat, preventing bacteria from growing. The berries add vitamin C, preventing scurvy. Our ancestors took putasik on long hunting expeditions lasting several months. It was the difference between life and death in the empty tundra. She gives me 2 bricks for the road. Try them at home. Remember us, she smiles. I take the bricks, dense, oily to the touch, smelling of meat and berries. This is not simply food, I realize. It is a concentrate of millennia of survival experience, packed into 300 grams. On the last evening at dinner, I asked Nunuki a final question. What is the most important thing about Arctic cuisine? What does she want the world to understand and remember? She thinks for a long time, then answers slowly, choosing her words. The most important thing is respect, she says. Respect for the animal that gave its life. Respect for the land that feeds us. Respect for the ancestors who taught us to survive. Respect for food,
not to throw away a single crumb, to use everything to the end. The modern world has forgotten this respect, she continues. People buy meat at the store, wrapped in plastic, without thinking about the animal that died.
They throw away half their food in the trash because they bought too much. They eat without noticing the taste, watching television, looking at their phones. They have forgotten that food is sacred, that it is life transferred from one being to another. We, the Inuit, remember. Every time we kill a seal, we thank its spirit. Every time we eat, we remember the animal, the hunter, the woman who prepared the food. We value every piece because we know what labor it took to obtain. This makes food not simply nourishment, but a connection, a part of the circle of life. If the world learns anything from us, let it be respect for food, she concludes. Then there will be no hunger, no wastefulness, no forgetting that food is a gift for which one must be grateful. I sit at the table, surrounded by the Kuyuk family, eating seal meat and muktuk, drinking sweet tea, looking at their faces lit by lamps. Outside the window it is -71, the wind howls, the polar night envelops the world. But here, in this small house, it is warm, filling, safe. I realize that I have spent a week not simply studying Arctic cuisine. I have been studying a philosophy of survival, a culture of respect, a science of adaptation developed over millennia in the harshest conditions on the planet. And this knowledge, these recipes, these traditions, are invaluable not only for the Inuit, but for all of humanity. Because they show that a person can survive anywhere, under any conditions, if they respect nature, adapt to the environment, and use all resources wisely. And that true wealth lies not in the abundance of supermarkets, but in the knowledge of how to obtain, prepare, and preserve food with one's own hands. The next morning I fly out of Grise Fjord on a small airplane. Below, the endless white tundra drifts past, the icy ocean, tiny dots of settlements. Somewhere down there, the Kuyuk family continues their life, hunting, cooking, eating, teaching their children traditions, preserving the knowledge of their ancestors, passing it on, surviving at -71, nourished by what the harsh Arctic provides. And as long as they remember their recipes, as long as they prepare muktuk and igunak, as long as they thank the spirits of animals for food, Inuit culture is alive. And that means humanity has not lost its connection to ancient survival knowledge. Knowledge that someday, in an unpredictable future, may once again become critically important for all of us.